We'll get started with this one. Yeah? Okay. All right. So as Heidi, you're Heidi? Heidi. As Heidi mentioned, we're just talking about what the topic is, what do we need to win? And what I thought is it's actually quite a topical time. We're at the time, we're end of the year, we're all heading into New Year's. And New Year's is a time where we tend to make New Year's resolutions and think about, well, what are my goals for the next year? Now, is everybody here parents? Yeah? Okay. So we'll talk about a little bit from the perspective of being parents and what influence that has and how sometimes we see things a bit differently in terms of what success and what winning is. So basically, we're just kind of, it's very brief, but it kind of comes down to how much discussion you're able to add into the topic. So I'll ask you to kind of try and contribute. The last time I was here for a talk, we were in one of the portables, so it was a lot more of an intimate kind of small discussion space, so feel free to talk. Okay. So as I said, a lot of the times there's a trigger of what makes us think about, what are our goals, what's winning, what's success. And 3 key triggers, I'm sure everyone's got different situations in their life that can cause you to think and be reflective, but a big one is milestone birthdays. So most of us would have gone through 21st, our 30th, our 40th, 50th for some of us. And those big milestone birthdays always make us as individuals tend to sit back and think, where have I come to? What have I done to this point? Do I see my life as a success? Have I done the right things? Am I doing the right things in God's eyes? Some of us might think of it from that perspective. Some of it might think of it from perspective of our relationships. Our relationships are in a good place. For those of us who've got children, we might sit there and think, do we think that as parents we've done the right thing by our children? Are we good as parents? And so milestone birthdays are one trigger. Another trigger, as I said just earlier, is New Year's. So of course, New Year comes around and the standard thing that everybody does is goals for the new year. And again, as parents, they can be goals for what we want for our families, what we want for our careers, what we want for our parents, because we're all at that state where also our parents are aging and there are things we might think that we want to do in that area. So there's a lot of things that go through our mind as a new year hits. It can be more practical things in terms of we want to buy a house, we want to renovate, we want our kids are starting new schools, we're going to try and encourage our kids to be more studious. There's all sorts of goals that come into mind when a new year turns. And apparently it's actually New Year's resolutions are the most that fail. But that's the new year perspective. And then on a more kind of a more morbid perspective, funerals. So funerals tend to be another trigger that make us sit back and reflect and think, as you're sitting there and you're hearing the story of somebody else or somebody that's dear to you that's passed, and you think, how will I be remembered? What will be my story at the end of my life? Or did I do the right things by that person? You can look at it from the completely different perspective. What didn't I do right in that situation that I can now do better in my other relationships? So these tend to be kind of 3 big triggers. I know also other triggers could be major sickness. If you're going through a major sickness, that can make you think twice and think back on your life and reflective and think, have I done the right things? What can I do to change? Can I be a better person? Any trauma, any big incident that happens in people's lives tends to make you kind of sit back and think, gosh, it was a close call. What can I do better moving forward? So there's a few things. Anybody got anything else that you think might be a trigger for what makes you be reflective or think about winning and success in your life? Childbirth, yes. Yeah, that's a good one, actually. Because for us, that seems like such a long time ago that didn't even trigger. But yes, you're right, childbirth does. That is such a perspective changer in life. And you start thinking about things very differently when that comes around. And you start thinking, actually, and children, they make you think in very different ways about who you are and the values you hold, and they test that. So children bring a very different perspective. So as we go through life, success and winning has very different ideas. And as we mature in life and our life situation changes, we look at winning and success very differently. So if we start at school, when we're school kids, what are we usually measuring by? What are we thinking is success at that point as a child, if you can think back that far? It is usually just grades. For some kids, it's popularity, how many friends have I got? So it is mostly around that. They're all fairly kind of superficial things that we're thinking about at that point in our lives. As we go through university, it doesn't change hugely. I think in university, in our studies, our success rate, or what our measure of success at that point, again, would have been mostly our grades and how well we're doing at uni. Could be part-time jobs. Anything else that you think might have been in that stage of your life? You might be on a path to wanting to get married during that time of your life, and you think, finding the right partner might have been your measure of success at that point. And then your career starts, success takes a completely different. No longer is grades important or winning, and now to feel like you're winning as a single person who's just started a new job, it's going to be more about your promotions, about doing well in your job and getting accolades maybe at work, or being recognised for some of the work that you do. What else might be happening in that point in your life where you're thinking, yeah, of course, yes. So, how much money you're making could be a measure of your success. Then when you have a career and your career is going, in one way, and now you have a partner, you're married, in that situation in your life, when you're now a couple and your careers and you have your career, success takes, again, very different perspective. And in that situation, a relationship becomes a more important factor than everything else that's happening around. So you're building a relationship with a partner, and success could be more in terms of, am I in a happy home? Are things going well at home? Secondary to, are things going well at work, when it was just you by yourself? Money could still play a role in that situation, very much so, because some of the biggest pressures that occur in families and in couples are money. It becomes a financial. Then introduce children into the picture, and things change again very much so. So what do you think might be your measure of success once you're a family unit with a career? It could be one career between you, or it could be two careers for two partners, plus children in the mix. What do you think might be your measure of success then?
Just being able to balance everything, like having a good balance between all tasks and keeping a clean house.
Keeping a clean house, yes. Yeah, you were going to say. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Not that I hold to that standard,
Yeah.
because it was something that was posted in the group, So it's a well-behaved kid is not really a...
You feel successful. If your child is doing well, you feel successful. And that's the kind of the cycle that I was getting at, is that once you have that unit and you're now a family unit with children, your vision of success changes. And this is when you said childbirth, because your perspective changes. So when your children are at school, your measure of success is now their grades, no longer what you were. And when they start to go to uni, your measure of success is how well they're doing at university. And they then start measuring your success by how successful they are in their careers, and them getting into a career path that's good. And then it could be, did they find the right partner? And did they marry well? Are they happy in their marriages? They all become they and what they do in their life becomes your measure of success for yourself, and you kind of become secondary to that. So the cycle goes around, and it goes around again. So we continually mature and change our perspective on what we see as being, or feeling like you've done the right thing and being successful. But with all of those things that we've kind of mentioned, they're all fairly superficial. They're all fairly, partly worldly, partly very surface. They're not really deep measures of success. Yeah, please. Interrupt at any time.
So, again, it's very worldly, but I don't even know how to put it. The movie The Fugitive, I don't know whether everyone's seen that movie. So in terms of status and well-respected, that could also be a measure.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, 100%. And that could be not necessarily just in your career, it could be in your community. It could be, in the society that you're in, the communities that you take part of, whether you have positions of leadership, whether it could be, if that's what you aspire to, then yes, your status. And that status could be from money, can be from position, can be. And people measure, that could be your personal goal for success or something you want to achieve. Yes, definitely. Relationships. So relationships could be your friends, could be your partner, could be even your relationship with your children. So there's a range of things that we measure up ourselves against, things that we have set for ourselves as saying, okay, well, this is what we think is good, and then we measure ourselves up against that, whether it be a relationship or a career or a status, right? There's a whole range of things, and we measure up ourselves against that. And so I guess as Christians, we tend to like to go back to the Bible and say, okay, well, what does the Bible say about success? And put that up as a measure and see where we fit against that. And two examples that tend to, I guess, resonate with me and that I find actually really good are Joseph and Daniel, because they are all of those things. They are leaders, they had status, they had success, they worked in the real world. Like, they weren't monks who were amazing spiritually and that's it. But they had to function in a real world where they had to do work, report to leaders, maintain their faith at the same time, which is a real struggle that we all have in the real world. Now, what they don't have is we don't see the family life of a wife and children, but if we just isolate them as individuals in what they did in their own personal lives, we see real success stories. So we all know the story of Joseph, right? Hard done by his own family. Now, that is a hard pill to swallow. Most of us who today would have experienced anything like that, you'd never go back to your family again. Those brothers, if you were treated anywhere near that, think about the number of people that you might even know in your own circles who have got family feuds, aren't talking to family members, and think about what caused that, and it probably won't even be anywhere near as close as what Joseph suffered from his own family members. So, in spite of his brothers, and in the face of temptation, when Potiphar's wife came to him, he still stood fast, right? And on a career front, he developed a nationwide plan to store grain that kept them out of famine for many years. So he was also good. He was skillful. He was good at what he did. What his work was, he did very well. And that was recognised, so he had status. He was in a really high position in the kingdom, in the empire. He was given huge responsibility, and he worked very diligently at that role. He was successful. But what we know about Joseph, and when you read through the Bible about his story, very regularly does it say, the Lord was with Joseph, and he did blah, blah, blah. The Lord was with Joseph, and he continued to be. And we know the verse that most of us know, the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, right? So in the face of all of these things that he had to deal with, he maintained integrity. He operated with a perspective of service all the time, and regardless of what hit him, he maintained full faith in God. Daniel, very similar. Again, someone who attained that status that from a worldly perspective today we can compare and say, okay, well, he was successful, and not under just one king. Every king that came round recognised how great he was at the job he was doing and promoted him. So he continued to be promoted time and time again under different rulers. So that means that he just wasn't just a favourite to one king, he actually was good at what he did. He worked with integrity, and he worked with a spirit of service, and he maintained full faith in God throughout his whole journey. And he was tested. He was 100% tested, knowing that he could be killed in spite of co-workers who were jealous of him, who plotted to have him killed. He didn't face him. He knew that if he prayed, he could be put to death. Yet he diligently, at the same time that he prayed every single day in the same position, facing the same direction in front of the same window, which he knew he was going to get seen, he did this every single day. He continued to do it, even knowing that his life could be at stake. And he fasted, even though that was considered to be strange amongst everybody that was around him. It was weak. How could you not eat meat and all of these amazing food that the king was putting in front of you? So despite what threats he had to his life, he maintained full faith in God. But he held integrity in that he didn't say, okay, well, if you're going to treat me this bad, well, I'm going to work terribly. I'm just not going to turn up to work today, or I'm not going to do my job. He maintained full integrity, showed up to what he needed to do despite the risks, and did what he needed to do continuously. So these are two people who, in a world, they had to operate in a world that was not godly, no, not very different than us, as individuals. So if we just look at them as just as individuals, without the rest of family and children pressures, they showed up and did their work very well, and they did it with integrity, with honesty, and they maintained their faith in God throughout their whole life journey. Now, I'm sure, like they're humans, so they're not perfect, there would have been times where they doubted, times where they were fearful, but they managed to get themselves through that and trust in God wholeheartedly, no matter what happened, to get themselves through through that situation that they were struggling with. The other thing is that both of them, what was the skill that they both had that appealed to their leaders at the time? Do you know what skill they both had? What could they do that was very attractive to their leaders? Yeah, right? So both of them had that skill set. So that was like their gift, that they were able to do that. And not only were they able to interpret dreams, but they also had the wisdom to explain them and give out a plan in a very methodical way, explain it to the leader, to the king at the time, and say, okay, well, this is what your dream means, and this is what you need to do, and work with the leader in the time to do that. So they used their skill that they were given, their talent or their gift that they were given, to help them in their success. Okay? And keep that in mind as we go through the next bit. So if we kind of put the Bible on one side and then we look at the world on the other side. And if you think about what the world is telling us all the time, the whole mantra of you've got this, we're always hearing this idea of you've got this, you have got this, and it's all centered about you personally, you've got this. So you work hard enough, you can achieve anything, you can be the best in the world. You are the master of your own destiny. Okay? That's what the world tells us all the time. Kids are being raised to be, you can do this, you can do anything you want to do. Sure, that's all well and good, right? But who does that remind us of right at the beginning of the Bible? Who else was told that they didn't need anything? They could be their own gods, right? This is the fall. This is the fall of Eve, right? Fall of Adam and Eve was the serpent pretty much coming and telling them, you don't need God. Knowledge can be right here, right? You can take it. You can be in control of this. You don't need to be subservient to a God. Take the knowledge. Be your own God. Off you go and you can rule the world. Okay? That was the fall right at the beginning. And the worldly message today is really not much different than that. And in a world where, we can see that we've deviated further and further away from a faithful society to becoming a more so a faithless society, what else is on the rise? Things like suicide is on the rise. Depression is on the rise. Why? Because when you are a human reliant fully on yourself and you fail, what else is there? Right? There's nothing else. So this is the devil's victory, to have us thinking that way. You can do it all on your own. You've got everything. You can do this, no problem. And then when you crash, you've got nothing. So this is the worldly lie of success. And it's what's drummed in to society all the time, especially first world societies. When you go to the poorer countries, it's not that at all. They know they can't rely on themselves. Yeah, please.
So we've had talks on it before, but social media even,
Yeah.
like the self-indulgent.
Yeah, 100%, right? It feeds that, completely feeds that. And our poor kids are the ones that have become really victim to that, who are needing that validation, that constant validation. In fact, when I had spoken to one of my kids, teenagers, and asked them, I gave a similar talk several months ago, and I said to them, okay, well, what do you, as a teenage boy, what do you see as your measure of success? And it wasn't for him being grades or anything like that, unfortunately. His measure of success was validation by his peers. What are the people going to think of me? Right? And social media preys on that, very much so. So it's a worldly lie, and we need to find ways to kind of remind ourselves and kind of snap out of that. Whatever we can do to be able to snap out of that and think, hang on, no. It's not me by myself that's going to get to a good place. I need something more. It's not about me. So one of the good examples in the Bible, if we now go back to that, is the parable of the talents. And so we're just going to read through the parable of the talents because a few really good points come out of that are worth us just kind of digging into a little bit. So if you can see it clearly enough, I might get a few different people to read the page. Can you see it clearly enough to be able to do that? Whoever's got the microphone can start.
So do you want me to read the
Yeah,
white part?
go for it. Yeah.
For the kingdom of heaven is like a man travelling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. Do you want me to keep going?
Okay. Yep. And is that no? Go to the end. Go to the end.
Let me go to the end. To each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received 2 gained 2 more also.
So we all know this parable, right? We would be familiar with this parable. Talents are obviously a currency from the time, and they were given some money. Off you go. You've got 5. You've got 2. You've got 1, and you go and you do something with it. I'll come back and we can see how you've done later on. The bit I've got highlighted is to each according to his own ability. Because sometimes people read this and say, hang on, how come only one of them was given 2, and one of them was given 5, and one of them was given 1? That's not very fair. Surely the one that started off with 5 was already ahead of the game because they had 5 to start off with. The one that was given 1, well, it's not very fair. He wasn't given enough the rest of the others. So he would have been a bit more scared because he only had 1 and he can lose 1 and he'd have nothing. But it's important to see, not miss that bit, to each according to his own ability. Because we are all given according to our ability. So this idea of looking at somebody else and saying, it's not fair, they've got more than what I have, of course they're going to do better in life than what I can. They married better, their kids are smarter, whatever it might be that we kind of look at others around us and think, of course they're going to be more successful than we are. Actually, no, God gives you according to your ability. It's up to you what you then do with that. And for some people, it might look like it's a lot, and for others, it might look like, you've been robbed. But no, that's actually what's best for you and what's best for you to do something with. It's now what you do with that. Also, not only are we given what's best for our ability, but we're also given what we need, right? So accepting that maybe we don't need any more than that because we may not have the skill set to do with more than that. We may be wasteful with anything that's more than that. More than that might actually be damaging to us. Okay. Someone want to read the next one?
But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So he had received 5 talents, came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents beside them.
Okay. So the key thing here is that they all went and did their thing, and then after a long time, what happened? The Lord came and said, okay, show me. So just like these servants, we too are going to come at the end and be accountable. So it's really important to think, well, you can't just cruise through life and think, you know what, it's just me, my family, that's it. I don't really care what's happening, with my brother, or I don't really care what's happening with my parents. I'm only going to deal with this, blinkers on, because at the end of the day, you're going to be accountable. You're going to be held to account. So whatever God has given you to do with, whether you know that you could be doing better with something that you have, we're all going to be asked at the end of the day, so I gave you this, what have you done? Okay? So always kind of recalling and reminding ourselves that we will be held accountable. Okay? Let's read the next one.
His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter the joy of your Lord." He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, "Lord, you delivered me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents besides them." His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter the joy of your Lord."
So the reward's really beautiful. Like the way this is worded is really, I find it a very comforting, kind of a very joyful way that the Lord says, you've been faithful over a few things, I'm going to make you ruler over many. Enter into the joy of your Lord. We, right from the beginning of time of creation, we're just stewards here on earth. We've been given an earth to do something with our life, so we are just stewards. Like we don't own anything that we think we own. We think, we own our homes and our cars and all these things, but that's all trivial. That's nothing. We know that, at the end of all this, that all goes, and we've got just this. That's it. So we are an investment. God has made an investment in us. What are we making? What are we doing with that investment? Right? This is exactly here. Great. So I gave you 5. You brought back another 5. Well done. Gave you 2. You gave me another 2. Well done. Enter into the joy of your Lord. And I don't think there could be anything more beautiful than that expression, that if you come at the end of your life and you're now being held to account and the Lord says that to you, that's ultimate success. And then the one that wasn't so good, what gets said to him?
Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid. Sorry, my blood sugar's a bit low.
That's all right.
Someone else.
Yeah, I can continue. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. But his Lord answered and said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not gathered seed. So why? Why didn't the servant do anything with that one? What stopped him? Even more than that. What else? Fear. And fear is something that actually tends to be the main thing that stops most of us from doing anything that we think, oh, should I, shouldn't I? But it's the right thing to do. But it's usually fear. Fear is the killer of so many things that could lead to what we'll know as being success. Right? So he was afraid and he thought, okay, no, I can't do this. I'm too scared. Let's keep it safe. That'll be it. But God comes to him and says, you know that I can make something out of nothing, is what he's telling him. So this wasn't somebody who was ignorant. This is somebody who did know that even when there is nothing, God will be able to harvest. He'll be able to find something. So why, when you know, were you still afraid? And that's, again, no different than us. Because we know what the reward is. Like, we're blessed to have been born in a faith or be in a faith and know what the reward could be, and yet we still live our lives with fear. At times, there are things that we may not step out and do because we have too much pride, we're too scared, we're scared of what someone might think of us if it's not the right thing to do. We're scared we might not look as powerful as we think we should look. So, fear. But it's the fact that he knew. And then the Lord says to him, so you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents, for to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Very different than enter into the joy of your Lord. Quite a contrast, okay? From fear, laziness, all of these things that stopped this one servant from being able to do something with his life. Has anybody got any comments they'd like to add to that?
It's not their money.
Yeah.
So we tend to, like, when we owe someone something, we only give what one for one. We don't give more than what we, if I'm making sense.
Yeah. So, but he didn't even get one for one. He gave it back exactly what it was, right? So you say, oh, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's not their money. So what do you think that they're right in what they did then? No, that's as in, I mean, like as in your perspective on it. You think he might have been thinking, well, it's not mine, I'm just going to protect it and give it back as it is. Yeah. What we're given, yeah. And I think because this relates more than just physically, somebody giving us money and we're just giving it back for them. It's somebody who's given us money to do something with. So it's kind of like that friend who's lent you money and said, okay, well, I'm going to lend it to you, but do something with it. Invest it, do something, right? And you come back, and your friend's like, what have you done? I'm like, oh, kind of was a bit scared to lose it. Here it is. Like, what was the point of that? It's that kind of same scenario. So, and what that's relating to is more our lives, is that we are an investment. Like, God has invested in us and given us all something that we can do with, right? And that something has to show itself in fruits of the people around us or our community. And as family and family people, where we've got partners and we've got children, those fruits need to show in our homes and need to show in our communities that we serve in. So when we talk about what our skills or our gifts may be, it may not be that, you can interpret dreams like Daniel and Joseph were. It may be something completely different. It may be even just simply that you have got a smile that impacts people in a way that other people don't, right? What do you do with that? We know this idea of you can't hide under a bushel. You need to actually let your light shine. So whatever you've got that has been given to you, has been invested in you, if you don't multiply that and do something with it, then you're just the same as this servant who did nothing with that one talent. And the easiest place to multiply, and the first place to multiply, is in our homes, because that's easy. That's right there. You have the ability to show and grow those talents that you have, because you have influence in that environment. The other thing before I go to that is that right from the beginning of time with Adam and Eve, they were given the earth and they had to work. They had to harvest, they had to grow their food, they had to grow resources. So we have been given not just our skills, but even the earth and all the resources around us to grow, to nurture, to take care of them, to do something with, to make more of it. Right? That's part of the investment. And that's what we will be held accountable for at the end of the day. So if we kind of pull that all together and we say, well, what do we need to win? As parents, it's, well, what do our children also need to see? And if we look at the qualities that Daniel and Joseph had, they underlie most things that can lead to feeling like we are winning at life. And winning not in the worldly view and the world lie, but winning in the godly view. Okay? And number one is this idea of service. Because with service comes selflessness. And if you are able to look at the world as saying, okay, well, what can I do for others, not what can I do for me, then you flip that whole, I can be the best, I can do this on my own. It's flipped. What can I do for others? So when your perspective and your vision is you enter into any situation, whether it be with your family, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be walking down the street, if your your lens is a service lens, then you're looking at everything saying, what's needed to be done here? What do I need to do for this person? What do I need to do for that person? Not what's in it for me and what can I get from this. Right? Use God-given skills and talents to serve others. That's the service mentality. The other part is the integrity. Integrity comes with honesty, comes with being decent. You know, it's all the things that our kids learn right from the basic age. Don't cheat on an exam. It's very basic. Don't lie. It's all the things that kind of wrap up together to be integrity. And again, if they don't see that in their own parents, and they see parents that tell the lie from time to time, they hear a phone conversation where you're, cheating on something, or where you're, covering up on something. They see that you come home and you talk about a story at work where you've undercut somebody to get a promotion. They're seeing things that is not integrity. And if they see that constantly from their own parents, then how do they model that same behaviour? And in which case then, how is it that God's investment in us is not being fruitful? We're actually stopping that right there. It's that servant who had the one and didn't do anything with it. So that's integrity. And integrity is most seen, obviously, when it's tested. We don't know how much integrity we have until we're put on the line and the integrity is tested. And then there's faithfulness. And faithfulness, we all live a life where we are trying our hardest to be faithful. But we also know that faithfulness isn't just the tick in the box ideas of, okay, I went to church, I had communion, I said my prayers. Again, faithfulness is one of those things that you don't really know just how faithful you are until it's tested. Right? And we don't know. I know, I'm not sure if, you hear a lot of the stories of martyrs and you think to yourself, what would I do in that situation? Would I have been able to do the same thing that they did? Kind of hope you do, but you just don't know. So faithfulness is another one of those things that it's a journey and you keep on doing your best, but it's in your actions of being faithful where your children are going to see, are you panicked about something? Why is mum or dad constantly worried and panicked and worried about and anxious about something? We're not modelling that faithfulness. Are they seeing that we're that there is when it comes to a situation where it's hard and we don't know what to do, they don't see us ever praying or turning to God or putting a situation on the altar. They don't see any of those things. So they're not seeing the faithfulness in action. So when it comes to us being successful or us winning at the life that God has blessed us with, we need to act in these ways, because if we think, like we started right at the beginning, if we think that our success is in seeing our children be successful, then they're going to get that from us. And they'll get that when they see us modelling a life of service, a life of integrity, and a life of faithfulness. And these are things that we do in our everyday actions. Has anybody got any comments or anything you'd like to add to that? Yeah.
It's about consistency.
Yep.
So I don't know what you do if you slip up that one time, because you basically lose the trust. But it's about...
Yeah, I like that. It is about consistency. And I think many of us will have a situation where you'll be able to say, okay, well, I either slipped up in that situation or I was able to be honest and truthful and maintain my integrity. But that's integrity is something that you see and your kids will see in the workplace, and the lack of integrity, they'll see that in the workplace as people are on that race to the top. So it's really important that the first place they see it and being put in action is through their own parents. Anyone else got anything else they'd like to add to that? So if we then tie that all together with, again, what we asked right at the beginning is, what does it mean? What is it to be winning? What do I need to do to win? So let's have a think about then, well, what is it to win? We said it's not about ourselves, it's not about us gaining all sorts of things in this world, cars, money, etc. Right? It's not about the worldly lie of, you know, you can do this, you've got this on your own, you're going to build an empire for yourself, because we know at the end of the day, that's all gone. So if we come back to what is winning and what is success in the eyes of God, I think for me this verse summed it up, and it's one that we hear in the liturgy all the time, just slightly varied, but it's pretty much this same verse. So do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. So for me, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's all the things that from the beginning of time have brought people down. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. All of that, that's not from the Father, that's from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. And winning is exactly that. It's to live forever. That's our ultimate goal, right? So if we have that as our ultimate, and we're reminded of this every liturgy that you attend, you're reminded of this in most of your prayers that you would read. But if we are constantly thinking, okay, well, winning is not that great, amazing promotion that I just got. Winning is not the new car that I just bought. That's not my measure. They're all nice to haves. We know that that's all going to disappear and be meaningless. But winning is living with God forever. And if we have that, I guess, as our ultimate, and we constantly remind ourselves of it, because in the day-to-day of life, that's not really what's in the ultimate in our head. In the day-to-day of life, we're coming home from work, we're rushing around, you know, getting kids doing homework, we're rushing around thinking, okay, bills that need to be paid, all of these things that distract us from what our ultimate goal is. And so how do we kind of remind ourselves or keep that in the back of our head when we feel I'm failing in this world because I don't have the status that I think I should have. I'm failing in this world because I don't feel like we're in the house that I should have for my family right now. Or I'm failing in this world because my children don't have the degrees that I think that they should have had by now. You know, all of these things that our society, even our own community, measures as success. Think about, are your kids work with a service mentality? Is their first thought, how can I help somebody? Do they hold integrity? Do you hear them in their conversations with their friends saying, oh, no, you can't do that. That'll be cheating. That's not right. Or are they more like egging their friends on and saying, yeah, let's do that. Like, these are the things that if you're taking your children as your measure of success, think about how they are modelling the things that you should be modelling. And if you're not modelling, then that's where we need to be, being that example in the home and making sure, okay, all right, maybe they're doing this, or the words that are coming out of their mouths, especially if you've got young children and you hear them repeat phrases that you might have said and you think, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I say, or they're using the same tone that I've used, whatever it might be, and you think, oh, where did they get that from? And you think, okay, I need to be careful about how I speak, or I need to be careful about how I react, because they're sponges, they all take everything. And then as you get older, your children are so much more observant than I think we give them credit for. And they notice, and they know, okay, well, that's how I want to deal with things, because I think that was the right way to deal with it, or this is not how I'm going to deal with it because that wasn't done. What I saw there was not done in the right way. So they learn good and bad from us. But we've always got to, in the noise and in the mess of everything, think, okay, winning at the end of the day, when we sit back and you think about your day, well, winning is more, did I act in a way that I'm proud of what my children saw? Am I comfortable in the eyes of God to say, okay, yep, I did. I acted with integrity, I acted with service, and I acted with full faithfulness. This is your measure. Not, how much money's in the bank today, even though sometimes that's really important to know, but that's not your measure of success. That's how you're going to get through maybe the next day or the next day, but using your faithfulness We have to change our perspective. Has anybody got any questions? Anything they'd like to discuss? Can't think. Yeah, go. It's a hot Friday, so we've all kept it light.
It was around the kids. Mentioned something, and I had a question in mind. Then I said I'll leave it to the end, and now I've gone completely blank.
Should I just go back and maybe trigger?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Comment that you made, I've actually never heard that perspective before, where you were saying you've got this. I actually never associated that. So what would you sort of replace that with, so that you can encourage your kids, or encourage, the people around you, without sort of using that term? Like what sort of things would you sort of encourage us to use?
It's interesting because it's a very common phrase, and kids are constantly using. You're getting it on mugs. You're getting it on absolutely everything.
Yeah,
and
I found it really interesting the way you associated that with that, because I was like, I've never heard that perspective before. That was mind blowing.
It's just that everything that we do is all about you can be, and as we've gotten older and you kind of watch how the kids are being taught and the expressions that are being used, it is very much about them. There is nothing anymore about trust in a bigger, higher being, or trust in an all-powerful, greater presence. That's stripped completely from every expression. What you would say to kids, I don't know. Like, I think, so long as they know that you've got, like, you're using this, you've got this. Sure, here's your agbeya, like you've got this. But I think in our community, they know that there's more than just them. It's making sure that that's not the only thing that we're using as the expression.
You're the star of your own movie.
Right, okay. It is the same kind of thing, right? It is. And everybody's about, you own it, you be you. Like, there's so many expressions around this just being, while it's trying to push the idea of be happy with who you are, and sure, there is, aspect of that of, yes, be happy with who you are, but we're on a journey of improvement. So you need to not just, that's where you stay, because that's almost no different than the person taking the one talent and doing nothing with it. Somebody made a question about this before, where someone was saying, should churches be open to everybody? Well, yes, they should be open to everybody, but that doesn't mean that you come in and we say, you're great as you are. You're great as you are now, but we're all on a journey to improve and go closer to God. So it's that same, like, we kind of forget half the story when we're telling everybody that you're good, this is it, stop, that's it, you are who you are, own it, be you, like all of these expressions that are currently at the moment that are all about just me, self-centered me. But then when me fails, what do I have, right? So it's so important that, like, we have so many resources. Where was it that we were talking about that? Oh, that was at camp, where Nagy was telling us. Nagy, who, from here, he was on our camp, and he was saying that we, even when we look at people who are not Christian and we might be critical of them, he said, just step back a second and think, if they're not Christian, they don't have a fraction of the resources that we have. We have so many resources around us to support us, to guide us, to give us better knowledge. You know, even if it's not just the Bible, it's even the people around us who might be advising us, or you know, you're attending the liturgy, you're taking the sacraments, you have abuna, you have confessions, you have so much resource to help you on that path to improvement. So be a little bit softer on those outside who may wrong you, who may not have all of that. So we have. So like how in that parable where the Lord said to him, but you knew that I can make something from nothing. I can reap where there is nothing, and yet you're still afraid. So we know, we are that same servant where we know. So it's allowing our kids to know that yes, you are amazing and you're beautiful because you're created in God's image. And yes, you've got this, you can do this with God by your side. Like we just need to add that extra bit to know that they have that crutch, they have that, you know, safety blanket, that pillow that they can land on. Like it's so important, you know, in a world where it's all about mental health. There's nothing more important to their mental health than knowing that.
What I sort of, like there are situations where you say to the child, you can do it through God. And then if there's a situation of failure where they actually don't achieve, it's a bit, well, us, you know, as adults, we can understand that sometimes no answer is an answer from God. How to explain that to a child and how to explain to them that, you know, yes, you have to work hard, but in the same time, no, like putting God in the picture as well, so that it's not all about them, but in the same time, in a situation where it doesn't go their way, how do you explain that to a child where they can still have that faith in God that, you know, sometimes it's going to go with you, sometimes it's not going to go with you. Like, how to explain that?
Yeah, it's a hard one. And I know with teenage kids, and I only had a similar conversation with one of my older kids, and he's 16, and he was able to look at a situation recently and look back, because now he's a bit maturer, so he can look back and say, this happened, and it all worked for the right reason, even though he might not have seen it at the time, but he can look back. So unfortunately, when the kids are young, it's very hard because it's black and white. And, you know, I prayed and God didn't give me this for Christmas, because sometimes it's as simple as that. I think there is no other way other than to explain to them that God has his time, and it may not be, that time does not match with us, because God is so much more knowledgeable and so much more aware of what's good for us. And their life experience, if they stay trusting, their life experience will teach them that. It's what's taught us that. It's our life experience that we go back on and we think, you know, that's why we're still here. If our life experience continued to fail us time and time again, it'd be very hard for us to stay faithful. But they have to develop their own life experience, and it's just a constant, you know, telling them this is, because I don't think there is, unless someone else has got any other suggestions of how you'd explain it to a child, why they didn't get what they wanted right there and then.
Sometimes you have to orchestrate situations where they do get answered prayers, so that it gives them
like
moments of hope here and there.
Because, you know, even as adults, when the same thing happens, like even as adults, when you have somebody who's unwell and you're praying and it doesn't quite go as you plan, you still question. You still go back and say, well, God, why? Why did this happen? So it's an ongoing journey. Anybody else got any other suggestions for that scenario?
Anyone else got suggestions?
From your own experiences?
Craig, did you want to say something?
Because I don't think it's wrong in terms of building up a child's self-esteem. It's more that it goes hand in hand with something. You know, like it's not wrong to say you've got this. Like
they just need to know how to when they fail, that there's more. It isn't just about them.
Yeah, that's right.
Because ultimately things don't go their way.
Yeah,
it'll happen.
I was Google searching something else because I thought it was in the Bible, and I was thinking whereabouts is it in the Bible? But you know how it said life is a marathon, not a race, like not a sprint.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's not actually in the Bible. It's anyway.
Yes.
But yeah, I just had this analogy of like if life was not a sprint and more of marathon. It's about running as a group, well, in terms of running, to you sort of draft off people. So it's like, yes,
Yeah,
it's
that's
a good
analogy. Yeah, and you also have to pace yourself, and there are times where it's going to be hard, and then you get through the pain, and you keep pushing. So it's actually quite a good analogy, actually. Yeah, I like it.
Any more questions or anything? All right, we'll just stand up to pray. Thank you so much
No
for
problem.
an awesome talk. This was great, and we really appreciate you coming all the way.
It's a pleasure.
It was really nice. If we can all stand up. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, power, glory, forever and ever. Just a quick note, there's no meeting next week. Next meeting will probably be in the new year. I'll have to figure out the dates, but we'll send it in the group anyways. So, I think...